This video is about making a trailer for a big old Generac generator that I have to make it easy to move around. I had some parts left over from this old Harbor Freight trailer that I had bought for the wheels, axle springs, and lights for my sawmill trailer. So I just kind of cut the pieces down, and I figured I'd start with that. Then I had some old wheels that needed some 1-inch axles, and I didn't have a long enough piece to make it a one-piece axle. So I started out, I had a couple short pieces of 1 inch, and I just, decided to start with them. And, I had to drill some holes in the ends of them to put some cotter pins through to hold the wheels on. So I just started by, putting in a Bridgeport and center drilling, and then just drilling the holes in, the two axle shafts, and they're just kind of like a stub axle that will hold some wheels that I had that they're not really great wheels, but they have a lot higher load capacity than what came on the generator. So I decided to try and use them. So I drilled the holes, and then I just tried to polish them up the best I could, get the rust off and whatnot, so that the steel bearings in the wheels would turn freely on them. That's my old 1950 South Bend lathe. Then I had an old piece of fence post tubing that I had some holes and stuff in to use for the rest of the axle, and I just filled in the holes with weld, and then I went back and just drilled a couple holes in from the end, so that when I put the little stub axles in, I could just plug weld them in place to hold them there. I mean, as you can see, it's not the best tubing in the world, but it was just some scrap that I had laying around. So, I decided to use that, and it actually turned out to be a really good fit for the axle. So, I had to pound them in a little bit because of rust on the inside, but I eventually did get them into the location where I wanted. And the next thing I'm going to do is, just go back and take those holes on both sides and just fill them in with a plug weld, and just make sure you get a good hot weld on the shaft to hold it in place. So, that's basically the start of my axle, and there's the wheels I had laying around. They were from an old cart that I had saved. So then, I just had to kind of get an idea of how it would fit on the frame. So I just put a couple blocks of wood in place to hold it up so I could drop some brackets for it to, make a permanent mount for the axle. Then the next thing I did is I just went over and, cut it. I think I used 12 gauge steel here. I had a sheet laying around, and I just went over and cut a couple of these brackets out on the plasma table to, just allow me to support the axle. It's only for around my yard, so there'll be no springs mounted on it or anything like that. So, the plasma table makes quick work of parts like this. So, after cutting the parts, it just need a little bit of, deburring on them. You can just I take an old chisel and I just knock off the slag that's on them and clean them up. But the cut actually comes out pretty good with the plasma. Then I had to cut out a couple washers too to space the wheels out. And as you can see, the first one there that I tried to cut, I forgot to hook the ground clamp up to the plasma, to the sheet of steel, and that's what happened. He didn't cut right through it. So, and there's one of the finished washers, and I just had to cut one more of them to have one for each side to keep the wheels centered and to kind of keep the bearings from rubbing against anything. Then I just I went over and used I've got a 20-ton press with one of those Northern Hydraulics, brake jigs that goes in it. And that's pretty good. I can bend up to 1/2-inch steel on that. So I've been pretty happy with that. And, this 12 gauge, you definitely can't bend on that little Harbor brake bender that I have. So, I just went back and I bent the two brackets so that I could, bolt them onto the bottom of the frame. And you have to fiddle with it a couple times to get them exactly 90 degrees, but you can do it if you're careful. So there they are, the brackets are done. Then they slip on that tube that the axle is mounted on. And then there's a little washer that's going to go on there. And, before tack welding it on, I just used some of those little 90-degree magnets to line everything up. And then I just lined all the other brackets up with the frame and went back and I welded the square tube onto those brackets to, give me some nice mounting for the axle. And then I went back and I just put in a couple 45 braces on each side just to give it a little bit of extra strength. Then took it in, just threw a coat of black Rust-Oleum on it to keep it from rusting any worse than it was. So here we are. I just, lined everything up, got it in the place that I wanted it, and, made sure that the wheels would clear the fenders. And then it was just a matter of going back and, drilling the mounting holes and bolting it on. And it was basically what the, the trailer frame looks like with the wheels on it and stuff now. So, it was all an old scrap left over from building my sawmill trailer. So I figured I'd put it to use. And I just needed a couple of washers to put on each side of those wheel hubs. So I just went down to my CNC router and I had some 1/8 inch UHMW plastic and just took a small milling cutter and cut out the 4 washers. They come out pretty ratty looking, but if you scrape them with a X-Acto knife to get the burrs off them, they come out pretty good. One of the things I had to buy though was this little jack. I think I bought it at Harbor Freight for $19.99. The mounting brackets were way out of position for what I needed, so I just took a cut-off wheel and cut the brackets off and tried not to damage the housing of the jack too much. And then I went over to the plasma table and I cut a new mount that I was going to be using to mount this jack on the frame. The tongue is real short. I didn't have a lot of area to pivot it, so I decided I would just move the jack up as high as I could. And here's just a little gusset to strengthen it up also that I cut out of 1/4 inch steel plate. So there's the couple pieces for mounting the jack. And I went back and I actually put some mounting holes in later and then just, lined them up on the jack and make sure you grind any of the galvanization off the area where you're welding. And that's what the jack looks like in the end. So it goes, mounts on the front there, and I'm able to pull that wheel up high enough so it's not in the way. And this will allow me to just kind of, roll the generator around. Then I needed some wooden mounting pieces for the generator, so got some of the rough cut ash that I cut on my sawmill out, and it had been drying for a couple of years. So you start by squaring up the boards. First you flatten one face on the joiner, and then the same, you just run it through the planer next, and that gives you two flat and parallel surfaces. And once you get that set up, the next thing you have to do is take one edge and make that be a perfect 90 degrees to the two surfaces there. So you just run it through the joiner and square that up, and then go back to the table saw and square up the last corner. So it takes a little bit longer to use rough cut lumber, but it doesn't cost me anything, so that's what I wind up using. So now with these two boards, I actually had to I cut them to length here, and then I actually had to go back later and put a little undercut on the edges of them for the way that the trailer frame pieces overlapped each other. So first I went back and I just squared them up, cut them to length, and it takes a while to get used to using guards on this new saw. I haven't used guards before, but with the 5 horsepower, I just really want to make sure I'm safe. So there it is, cutting them to length and squaring them up, and then this is going back and putting that little undercut in so that they will clear the frame rails. So this is kind of a dangerous cut, made without a guard, but it's the only way to do it. So you be real careful when you're doing stuff like that. Then another part that I decided to add a little compressor to this. And I purchased one of those Harbor Freight $39 ones, and I needed a bracket to mount it. So I had some old 14 gauge diamond plate left over from another job. So I just went back to the plasma table and drew up the bracket. Put all the holes in it. I actually used holes from the compressor mount, or the rubber feet on the compressor, so I could use them to, line up with this bracket and bolt it down. And so this is just cutting the bracket. I went back to that little Harbor Freight bending press that I have, and it's supposed to bend 14 gauge, but it just wouldn't bend it. The whole thing was flexing when I tried to bend this 12-inch piece of 14 gauge. So wound up going back and using the 20-ton hydraulic press, which bend stuff like this no problem. So just a matter of putting a bend on it, get everything bent up, then just cleaning it up and putting coated Rust-Oleum on it. Then I just needed some rubber washers to use to isolate the mounting bolts on the compressor. So I had some vibration pad rubber that I just took a little punch set that I got from Grizzly Tools years ago, and made myself some rubber washers that I could use for the compressor mounting for the last couple pieces. So there's the bracket on the trailer now. It's screwed onto the front of it, and there's a little compressor that I bought. One thing you want to do if you buy one of these compressors is make sure you run the break-in on it. They recommend that you run it with the the air valves open. So first thing I did now is I'm mounting those two pieces of ash on the trailer to set the generator on. I decided to use wood because I figured it would help a little bit with the vibration dampening. And I didn't want to put a solid bed on it because I really wanted the airflow. And then there's the compressor feet and how the washers are going to mount the compressors. So I start with the rubber washer I made on the bottom, and then the compressor foot. And then I'm just going to, I had to go back and tap out the compressor feet mounting holes to 1/4-20 because they were M6, but that was no problem. So I tapped them out, and I tightened the bolts up, and I just snugged them up so that they could move around a little bit and squish the feet. And then in the end, I went back and I just put an extra nylon lock nut on there just to make sure nothing would back off from vibration over time. So that mounted on there real nice, and it's kind of out of the way. Give me a little bit. If I need to fill up a tire or do anything in the yard with air, it'll help me out a little bit. And here's the generator. It's I think it's a 370-pound generator. Plus, when you put 16 gallons of gas in it, it weighs about 500 pounds. It's getting real tough to pull. It's like 15 years old, and the tires keep going flat on it. And this summer we had like 6 power outages. I had to drag it out, so I decided to do something. So I started by taking the old wheels and stuff off, and then just had to, pick it up and go back and slide the trailer frame under it. Then I mounted, and I was a little bit low there, so I had to raise it up a little bit more. And once I got that sitting, approximately in place, I just, lowered it on there. And I tell you what, the valves on my tractor are getting really sticky, and you just can't, the loader just won't go down slow anymore. It just, it's either goes down fast or not at all. So I'm going to have to look into that someday. So here it is, just sitting on the trailer, and for mounting it, I decided to, try to use a couple holes in there. And I decided to try and use them for the one side. So I put some bolts up from the bottom. And as you can see, I put vibration pads under each corner of the generator also. And then I put another one of those rubber washers on there. And just placed another one of the nylon lock nuts on there and just snugged it down so that, the vibration pads could work. So I figured that, would probably help with the vibration, keep everything running smoothly too. So I got that side done, and then for the other side, I just had some big old conduit pipe clamps and some real high density rubber. So I just put a rubber liner in each of the pipe clamps and just came up from the bottom. Well, there you can see the vibration pad on that corner too. And then I just put them on and came up from the bottom with another bolt and a nylon bolt, their nylon lock nut. So they're kind of, everything's kind of floating and able to vibrate. So it did, it was pretty easy to mount there. And there it is, basically all done, except for every trailer I make has an ash back bumper. So I grabbed another piece of ash and, I went in and processed it, squared it up and planed it and jointed it and everything, and then put some polyurethane on it. And here I am just bolting it in place to kind of finish off the trailer. So, I think this is really going to help me a lot in the future because, when you want to move this generator around, it's really tough. And the older I get, the harder it was to pull. And, this, and by having a compressor on it also helped me. I can run a little Brad gun or whatnot if I want in the yard too, or blow up a tire. And then there's just a holder for the air hose. I got a 50-foot coil of air hose that I was going to use on it, and it was just one, an old one laying around. And I went down to Tractor Supply and bought one of those fiberglass electric fence poles, and I just cut that down and made a block of wood and epoxied it to it, and there it is. I got a nice, nice way to hold 50 foot of air hose, and so the trailer is, all ready to go here. It's really easy to tow. The thing runs super smooth with all the rubber pads on it, and it's never going to be a problem again getting it out. I can just grab onto it with the tractor, and I have a plug on my house that I can plug it into for power outages, and also I have the ability to use it anywhere in my yard now. And it is a pretty powerful generator, and it's run by a 30 horsepower motor. So it's been a really great thing that I bought probably about 16 years ago, I think. And the thing's run flawlessly since then. So, basically I thought I'd share this video with you and just, show you how easy it is to, make a generator easy to move around. And even if I didn't have those trailer parts, I think I probably would have just bought one of those little $160 Harbor Freight trailers and used that by itself. So, it would have saved me a little bit of work and stuff. But, this is what it came out like. And thanks for watching. Please subscribe.